right now.
Oh god, I'm way too close to the camera now. I'm just gonna scoot
You're not close enough.
No.
Y'all gotta zoom in.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Tea and Tales Tavern Book Club, the monthly book club featuring myself, Peter, and where am I? So above me is Jam.
Me.
That's you, Jam.
My bad. I'm Jam, aka Blue Clovers, and to that direction.
You're right.
Yes.
I'm Victoria.
And who's below you, Victoria? Well, there's nobody below me. I don't know why I'm pointing. To my right.
That direction.
Yes, to my right.
That direction.
I'm sitting beside my bestie today.
It's Megan, but she's muted.
It's me. Hello. I wasn't sure when I was supposed to talk. I didn't want to ruin the intro.
It was already ruined.
It's never ruined. It's always chaotic
amazing.
and fun.
Yeah.
So this is our 13th episode, which is technically a year.
Lucky 13. Congrats on a year.
Thank you. We've had some laughs, we've had some cries, we've thrown books in anger.
Yeah.
I haven't thrown a single book. Did you throw a book?
Which book did you throw?
I wanted to throw Ruth Ware's book, but it was on my Kindle, so I didn't want to do that. Because that was expensive and difficult to find.
That's fair.
Terrible book. But we're here to discuss a good book, which, if you were here for our first episode...
Why are we shading the
What a transition.
I'm not good at transitions. I never have been.
I feel like Peter was like, what if Megan thinks I didn't like her book? I better say right now that I thought the book was good, just to establish.
There will be a lot of that, because I tend to take massive big dumps on books here, but it's so important that I don't, because I like this one, so that's why I was like,
I was gonna say, if you want to take a massive big dump on my book, I'm okay with it. Like, don't hold back just because I'm here.
No. So, yes. What are we doing? Yes. No, I wouldn't do that. You're not helping, Victoria. Stop hiding your face in shame. So, we read, for our very first episode, book 1 of the Dream Things True
books
series. It's only a 2-book series at the moment. Nobody asked you. Oh, Siri kicked off because I said series, and she's done. Fuck off! She's doing it again.
It is a duology. There are only 2 at the moment, and possibly forever, and possibly not forever, but for now.
Yeah, but like I like to sass you, you are the Douglas Adams of trilogies.
The thing is, there is a third idea for this world. But it ties in really heavily with the multiverse that my other novels take place in. So if I wrote it now, I don't know if it would make sense. But there is this... Oh my god, I'm already like derailing us. All of my novels kind of take place in a multiverse, and they're individual from each other, so you don't have to read all of the series in order to understand each individual series. I'm very particular about that. I'm not trying to create the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't want people to feel like they have to read like 6 million books to enjoy one. But there is kind of, if you read all of them across time, eventually they do form like a bigger story. And so the main reason I haven't done the 3rd installment of this story is because I'm worried that it can't stand alone. And I don't want to do that to people where it's like, here's a story about this world, but actually it's about a different world. And I don't... So until I can find a way to do it that feels like it would be satisfying standalone, I've kind of been hesitant to do it.
See, if you remember last year, I made a comment, which I won't repeat because I feel like that's leading to something, and I feel like you were immediately...
You mean you shot an arrow straight into my brain?
Yes, I shot it.
And secrets leaked out? Like,
yes.
Yeah, that did happen.
I immediately said a sentence. I kind of said it in jest, thinking, oh, tee-hee-hee, and you were like, you fuck, who've you been speaking to? Immediately. So I shan't repeat that for spoilies, but We haven't even said the name of the book yet. Life is but a dream. Book 2
Ooh,
in
pretty.
the Dream Things True.
Oh my god, you guys all have one. I'm gonna cry. That's so pretty.
Yeah. All physical copies as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, last time I had it on Kindle. This time, need the book. Need to flip through the pages.
Yeah.
This was my first time working with my cover artist, Molly, who made the covers for both of these 2 books. And she has told me that the Dreamers Do Lie cover remains one of her favorites that she's ever done. So
I forgot to bring Dreamers Do Lie in. I've got it on my bookshelf.
Oh, I can go get one.
This is about where me and Victoria
Oh,
shuffle away.
Victoria's got
Jam,
it.
Jam,
What?
you keep Megan company while me and Victoria go get our copies
it's
of Dreamers Do Lie.
also funny. I'll just fill space. It's also funny because when we made these 2 covers, so there's a concept in cover design where you want like the text elements to lay out the same across all the books in a series. And when we did this one, it was our first time working together, and Molly wasn't sure what she was gonna do for the second cover. It was like the only time we didn't plan like what we wanted the elements to be across the series when we started. So Kaylee is ever so slightly a different size on the second cover, and it drives her nuts that she was never able to fix that. That they ever so slightly don't align. So every other series we've done, we've always talked about the elements ahead of time so that she can plan her template, because she's like, oh, no one's gonna notice, but they're a slightly different size and I hate it.
I do really like the Dreamers Do Lie cover a lot.
Me too. She did such a good job.
It is an excellent.
It's oh, sorry, I won't talk over you.
No. I was going to say,
we do it all the time.
It's such an interesting story though, because I was connected to Molly through a friend of mine who was already working with her, and this was our first collaboration. And so we had talked about what we wanted the cover to look like. And the first mock-up that she sent me, I wasn't really thrilled with. And I felt really bad about it because I had seen other covers that she'd done and I knew that she was really good at her job. But it didn't incorporate, like, I really wanted flames to be like a central part, because that burning river was like the core concept of that book. It was what birthed that book for me. And so I messaged my friend in a panic and I was like, I don't really like it. What do I do? And she's like, just tell her that you're looking for something different. And so I reached out to Molly. And I can talk about this comfortably now because, I mean, we've worked together for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. Like, she's my dedicated, like, big series cover artist. She's done all the covers for the Aravallia Chronicles. There's another one. She did all of the covers for Celestial Serenade. So I don't mind talking about this. And so I reached out to her and I was like, it's kind of not what I'm looking for. And she told me that her original concept just wasn't working. And then she tried the cover, like the concept that became this. And we were both like, that's perfect. Like it just kind of happened where we were both kind of like shooting ideas and like, how can we find a way to do it that won't look totally like cheap or chintzy or whatever. And she put this together and it was amazing. And we were both like, that's it. That's the best thing that's ever gonna be. And it's still like one of her favorites and one of my favorites as well. I think the cover for Once Upon a Dream, the box set for the first Aravallia Chronicles, is a close tie for me because I also really love that cover. But it's definitely, and it cemented our relationship as working together. Like I've never ever hesitated again to be like, hey, what about this? And she always, like, she'll even explain like what the mechanics of the cover are and like what each design element is doing if I ask her to, and I appreciate the hell out of that.
One of the things I like between the differences of the 2 characters is in book 1, there's Kaylee, and she's just kind of in like a simple, I don't know if that's a dress or something, but like a simple black outfit, just holding the cup. But in book 2, she is knighted up to the hilt. She's got her armor on. She's got a sword. She is kicking all the ass. And that really shows her progression as a character from book 1 to book 2. I don't know if there was a question there. I was just saying how nice the covers were.
I was just giving other people a chance to talk. This was another thing that was really important to me, and I don't know if I'm like jumping the track here by talking about this stuff. So tell me to shut up if I ever overstep. One of the reasons why I wanted to write the sequel to this book, it's kind of the bane of every author's existence, is you sit down and you're like, I'm going to write one book. I'm going to tell one story, and that's going to be the whole story. And then by the time you're midway through that story, you're like, oh, there's so much more story here. And one of the reasons why I felt it was really important to write the second book was Kaylee, spoilers for the first book, she does kind of save herself in the end, which was an important element to me. But she does spend a significant amount of the book feeling like a damsel in distress, someone who has kind of been led around by the other characters and who hasn't had a ton of agency. And I really wanted to rectify that. Like, I wanted to show that while that may be a thing that happened to her in her life, it's not the total encompassing whole of her. I also thought by the time I got to the end that, I mean, if something like that happened, Lucifer would 100% retaliate. So I was like, okay, there kind of has to be a sequel at that point. But I also didn't like where I left things with Morrill. So there were just, it was kind of a thing of where I was like, yeah, this is a really cool story, but I felt like it had to have a part two. And so when we did the cover design for the first book, it was all about like that hellscape and kind of this demure character. And then when we talked about the concept for the second one, I was like, I really wanted to do green. I want to do like that celebration of like earth and life. And I really want Kaylee to be in her armor because I felt like that was important.
It's maybe
So
a kind
I
of.
have-
Oh, sorry, Jan.
Oh, my bad. But I'm cutting you off here. Like, this was one of my questions that I was thinking about as I was reading, when I finished the book, is how did you decide to make this just like, you know, the last book, the one more book? Why didn't you make this 2 books? Because there's so much story. There's so many characters. There's so much going on.
Part of it is, I
damn.
think I was very young, and this is kind of the tragedy of being a writer. When I go back now and read these 2 books, if I was writing them now, it would 100% be a trilogy. And I think the main answer to the question is I was so young in my writing career, I didn't really have a solid grasp on how to write the type of story I was trying to tell. Like, this was very much a learning book for me. It was my first big epic war that I wrote. It was my first time trying to juggle sort of multiple perspectives moving through different aspects of the story. And when I did it, it felt really good. But when I look back at it now, like when I compare to, it's almost like a filmmaker going back and looking over like older projects. And I compare this to like the Aravalia Chronicles, which has these like vast sweeping war stories, and like the climactic confrontation in the Aravalia Chronicles is like half a book long versus this one where it's all kind of crammed into, I think, like the last third sort of the book. And I think it's just because I know how to do more now. And back then I was really struggling, like, how do I show this? How do I how do I really get the reader in there and get it on the page? So it's the sort of thing where, like, if I went back and completely rewrote the series, I could do so much more with it. But also, it's the product kind of where I was at the time. It was kind of the best I could do. So it's happy, but it's sad sort of thing. Like, there would be so much more if I wrote it now, but I don't know that I want to go back and rewrite the same book like 6 times.
Were there any really painful edits that you had to make when you were putting the story together, and would you include them if you redid it now?
I don't think there was anything that was really painful to edit. I will say, trying to avoid spoilers, but I will say that this book is painful to me in a specific way because there was a character's story who I wanted to end differently. I really, really wanted a character in this book to be redeemable, and I tried so many times during the outlining and the drafting phase to find a way to redeem that character and to make their ending different. And it just didn't. Every time I changed what happened, it just didn't work. It felt like it bled all of the meaning and all of the impact out of the story. So it was one of those things where I had to let that character be the way that they were on the page, and I had to just go ahead and let things happen the way they happened, which again was a learning experience for me, because even as a writer, like you want the best for your characters. Sometimes you want them to be able to see their flaws and become better people, and sometimes that's just not realistic. Sometimes that's just not what happens. So I think the most painful part of this process for me was learning that the story has to be paramount, and sometimes that means sacrificing one of your babies to it.
I want the spoilers. I think I know which character, but like I want spoilers. This
Yeah.
is not a spoiler free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, this
as
is
long
not
as you guys are
spoiler-free
good.
zone.
It's Lucifer, man. I wanted
I
him.
knew it.
I
knew
wanted
it.
him to. Yeah. There's a. This might come up later, but there's a, a scene near the end, where Kaylee's trying to negotiate peace with him, and he makes a comment, and I don't remember exactly what it is because it's been years since I've actually read it. But he makes a comment, about like, why can't you just love me? I've given you all these things, or I've tried to give you all these things. And it's just this very clear depiction of the fact that he doesn't really understand what love is. He doesn't really understand how to connect on this emotional level. And it felt like when I wrote it, like he was trying to connect. Like there was some short-circuited part of him that was trying to find that connection, and he just couldn't. Like there's just no part of him that could make that connection. And I played with that concept so many times. I was like, is there some way that like the power of love could break through here? And it just felt like everything that the characters went through and everything that they did, Lucifer is kind of that tragic figure of like he can see things in the world that other people can't see. Like he talks about how Lilith was his angel and how she was so amazing, but he couldn't be with her because of the danger of creating another half, like another demigod. And so he can see these truths in the world, but when it comes to like that deep emotional understanding, he just does not have it. And in order for sort of the consequences and the emotion and the impact to carry through, it had to end the way that it ended. And that just made me sad. But it had to be. Like, it just felt like if he had survived or if he had changed, it would have just been like, okay, so they went through all this for nothing.
That's true. That entire part of that conversation, because like I finished this book this morning, so I was like real sad. But the entire part of the conversation had me really sad for Lucifer, and I was like, he doesn't deserve this pity that I'm feeling. But like, damn, he really was trying, and it made me wonder how, because I mean, we don't delve into like the cosmos and the universe and all of their understandings, obviously, and he's like this god that has like such a deep, like profound understanding of the universe that we would never have, which is fine. But it's like, how did he become so twisted? Because in the book, like they're talking about Lucifer, his last name's Hillel, I think. I don't know if I'm saying it right. But
Yeah.
like how he was like this god of knowledge and like he seemed like a great guy. And then something along the way turned him into this manipulative piece of shit. And I don't know. It made me feel sad for the person, the god that he was previously.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with how it ended. Like he needed to die. But part
Yeah.
of me really had hoped that he would, I don't know, sit down with his siblings and they would talk and have a little sibling fight, and then and then they would carry him away and everything would be good, and I don't know, maybe he'd be in God rehab for a bit, sort out his feelings. Like obviously that wasn't gonna happen, but I was like,
Yeah.
hopeful.
But no, I went through that whole same. It's funny because I think a lot of people get the idea that authors sit down and they're like, and then I'm going to make my characters suffer and it's going to be the best. But for me, like I went through that whole same process where I sat down with that scene over and over. And it's true that writers do a lot of their novel planning in the shower. So it's like every time I was in the shower thinking about that scene, I was trying out all these different combinations of how can that dialogue go, and is there a point that they can get him to where he could be tipped over that edge into seeing. And I think I actually do have an answer to how he got so twisted. I didn't fully understand it then. I do understand it now. I have a much more in-depth understanding of how he got to that point where he is, and why ultimately he couldn't be redeemed, even though I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end it didn't even matter. Um so but yeah, it was just like every time I would try to find a way to make that change happen, it just felt really stilted, and I kind of got to a point where I realized he can't see his own flaws. Like, he's so far down this rabbit hole, and I think a lot of it is sunk cost fallacy. Like, he has his own sunk cost fallacy in that he's like, I've spent eons on this idea of my life and my ability to manifest a certain type of world and the potential of humanity, that he just couldn't let go of that. He just couldn't change it. And he's like his own worst enemy, because every time someone's like, but what about this? He's just like, no, it has to be all or nothing. It has to be the full, like, I've worked so hard, it has to be the full thing or nothing. And it made me sad too, because I was like, my guy, just accept the compromise.
Do we want to get into like, well, I guess there's a bajillion questions we all have, and I have like,
I know we skipped to like the end of the book as well.
I know. We can backtrack to the very beginning if we want.
Do we want to do the
Yeah,
recap, or should we just ask
Whatever
Megan
you guys want to
questions?
do.
I think just questions.
Because I've got part 1 ready.
We can just go straight to questions, because I know we didn't want to like spend an hour or so like recapping the whole book.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our... what's the longest one we've done? Like 4 hours, if not more? Sitting here talking about a book, and we didn't want to keep you for that length of time because we know how busy you are.
I mean, I'm happy to... I could talk about this book for 4 hours, but I also don't want to keep you guys here listening to me yammer for that long.
Megan, I could listen to you talk for days.
Yeah. I think that was part of that silence, is we're all just sitting here like, tell us more stories, Megan, tell us more things. Yeah. One of the questions I wanted to ask... Oh,
go for it.
I was going to say, ask a question.
There's a moment where... I'm just going through my notes here. There's a moment when Lucifer is in Niwar. Did I say it correctly?
I believe so, yes. It's been a while since I've looked at those, but I believe the most of the words in this book are one-to-one what they look like on the page.
So they're in Niwan, and there's a bit where Akos, not across, because I kept calling him across in my head for the entire book. Like, it's not across, it is Akos. So Akos goes to knock on the door, and Lucifer says, come. Now, being that you and I are big fans of a certain sci-fi show, whenever anybody knocks on, well, doesn't knock, but rings the chime for Captain Picard's door, Captain Picard goes, come. So was the way Lucifer invited people into his room anything to do with Captain Picard?
It's so funny that you picked up on that. This is one of those little details that I'm so stupidly proud of for this book. It doesn't actually have anything to do with Picard, although it may have earwormed me. Like, I may have originally gotten the idea to do this from watching that show. There's this whole running sort of theme with Lucifer where anytime somebody approaches him, he's really curt and really commanding, because you'll notice that, like, he also just looks at people and is like, talk. Like, he gives these really curt one-word commands. It's never like, what do you have for me? Or what's happening? It's always like, get in here, tell me this thing, and in as few words as possible. And it's the main reason why I had him, aside from the fact that it actually made me chuckle, the main reason why I had him do that is just it's just showing how sort of self-absorbed he is. Like, anywhere that Lucifer is, he is the most important person in that room. He doesn't really regard anyone else with any kind of respect or admiration, or even just really think that they're worth his time. So even if it's a king or like a really important general, like it doesn't really matter who's talking to him. He's just like, and get to your point, sort of thing. So it was really more of a character choice, but I'm sure there's always these little things that sort of wiggle into your brain whenever you're a creative that just kind of hang out. So I'm sure it probably did at some point originate there, from that being a thing that, like, that's how Picard's management style kind of is too.
Yeah, that was exactly my thought. And after I noticed that, after he said "come" on the door, it felt like Lucifer not had a authority structure similar to Picard. Like, I'm not saying he is Picard, and Patrick Stewart, if you're watching, we're not saying you're Satan, but the way Lucifer would, as you said, would talk to people, like just get to it, is very much Picard. When Riker would come in and be like, just tell me the facts.
Well, and I think there's a distinction. It's interesting because when people talk about the craft of writing, and this applies to film as much as it does to novels, so I think it's kind of equal across both. One of the most important things is mannerisms, because the thing that's going to actually people don't realize how much of our communication that takes place between people is nonverbal. And so a really interesting example is, like, right now I'm sitting here at my desk making hand motions that none of you can see because I'm not on camera because I'm still recovering from sickness and I don't want you to watch me hack up a lung. But there's so many parts of communication that are your posture. Are you sitting up straight? Are you relaxed? Are you making eye contact? Are you looking all around? And so mannerisms becomes like one of those really important things to embody a character in text, because a lot of those little subtle things are either going to pass unnoticed by people who don't really read that depth, or they're going to be really heavily picked up on people who do look for that nuance of depth. And so there are a lot of things that I wanted to convey with Lucifer in that sort of characterization, body language. Sorry. So I think when you look at Picard, you can see that he's a man who's efficient. And so a lot of his communications are abrupt and curt. And when you do first meet him, like even when Riker first meets him, he seems like kind of a dick. But the more you get to know him, the more you kind of see that this is just like the efficiency of his job. He has other more important things that are on his mind. So when he's communicating with people, he wants to skip the small talk and get straight to the facts. But when you see him in a more relaxed environment, when you see him sort of relaxing, he's much different. And so I think that was the major difference with Lucifer, is that even when you see him in his more air quotes relaxed, sort of neutral state where he's not like in command mode or he's not in management mode, he's still very curt and he's still very arrogant. And that's sort of where it makes that distinction of like, he actually is a dick. He's not just being curt and he's not just being efficient. He is full of himself and he just doesn't think you're important unless you have something he cares about. And then his whole demeanor changes when he gets news that he's actually interested.
Which does make sense because he is Lucifer. And I also wondered, as you were saying that, could part of it be that he isn't human? Like he has no cut. Well, I imagine he's learned humanity after many years of dealing with them, but does he understand humanity and what humans do?
That's a tough one. I can say, because I don't really think that it in any way spoils anything that hasn't been told. The gods in this book were not born as like human entities. They were modeled after human entities, but they were not born as human entities. So they were born with this higher power like inherent in them. So they've never lived a human equivalent life. They have experienced human equivalent emotions, but from their own perspective. So Lucifer has never like known what it is like to be a human and to not have all of this power at his fingertips. Like he's never been at that base level, and so there are a lot of human experiences that he can't really connect with. I think that at a certain point in his life and in his development, he would have been capable of gaining that understanding, but I think that he rejected it. I think that Lucifer, and this is kind of, you can kind of see the like framework for this in the dispute between the gods, where Lucifer very much has the perspective of, we are gods, we have all of this power, and we should be using it. And we should be using it to influence humans as well as like the world that they live in. And that was sort of where the key conflict arose, was there were certain gods who were like, no, we're just kind of shepherds. We should just be watching the humans. We should just be like supporting them, but we shouldn't really be like teaching them magic or teaching them how to create these grand societies. And Lucifer was kind of like, fuck that business, I can do this, so I want to do this. And I don't think it ever really occurred to him to think of it from the human perspective, or to think like, are they ready for this? Because to him, he's like, I have chosen this person, and that means that they're ready for whatever I say they are. And so I definitely think he at least has that godly perspective of like, I have this power that makes me able to make these choices and able to dictate essentially what should and shouldn't be. And he doesn't understand why the other gods don't see it that way, kind of thing.
I think that personality comes through a lot in this book, more than like the first one, because there was a section of the book that I found. Hold on. It was, to summarize it, it was when I forgot where they were going, but they were talking about like the different priests, and I guess their secret tunnels that Lucifer and nobody could find or locate. And that whole part was just, I think it was Akos that talks to him at one point. He's like, well, you're so powerful. You have all this magic. Can't you just, deal with it? Like, just solve the problem. You can do it. And he's like, well, this is beneath me. Why would I do that? And that pissed me off.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that's so Lucifer. That is exactly what he would do.
Yeah.
And so I ended up writing on like my sticky notes. It's just like all the things that made me upset about Lucifer, like his character. It was like one of his biggest faults, in my opinion, is that he likes to toy with his prey. He likes to toy with his prey a lot. He could have definitely swooped down, did whatever he wanted to do to like mankind and be done with it. But it's like the whole thing is a game for him. He has to have this big war and get everyone to submit to him in like the cruelest ways. It's just like, you have a mission that you want to complete. Just go do it. What are you doing? And then I wrote, let's see, he refuses to use his own power to deal with the hidden tunnels because it's beneath him. And that's something that Sayel, I think, is their name, I think. The other priest, that's like a cousin to Kaylee. But they bring that up about how like he's too prideful. He wouldn't use his own power because that kind of task is beneath him. He assigned that to somebody else. Somebody else has to deal with it. And just, I think because of the centuries or millenniums, or I don't know how long he's been planning this, like taking over the world or the universe eventually. But I think he got very tunnel visioned. And so the fact that he didn't even consider, because it's mentioned like there's different types of magic, like the arcane magic and divine magic, and the fact that he didn't even consider that they would use arcane magic to hide from him, like, come on, you're supposed to be smart. What are you doing, Lucifer? Get your head out of your ass. Essentially.
Yes. Well,
That's
and
how I
again, this goes back to the whole, could I redeem this guy? And this was one of the things that made me feel like I really couldn't, because that was another one of my absolute favorite details, was when this guy was like, you could snap your fingers and solve this problem. And he's like, it's not my job. Go do your job and do what I told you to do. And it also doesn't even occur to him to give them like divine power to do it either. He's just like, go figure it out, my boyo.
You're on my team. You should be able to do it. Just go do it.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you?
But I think you're 100% right, is that there was a part, and I think it was in this book, and it was just kind of brief because, again, I was a baby writer, so I didn't weave these things in as expertly as I would now. There's a part where they talked about in the past, before the War of the Gods, how Lucifer was a teacher, and his teaching method wasn't to tell you, hey, the sky is blue because there are particles in the atmosphere that split the light and make it look that way. His teaching method was like, well, why do you think the sky is blue? What do you see about your environment? This is a really weird example, but he would apply that to like everything. He would apply that to philosophy. Why do you think this is moral and this is immoral? Or why do you think the world works this way and not this way? And so it was that very kind of like, I'm not necessarily going to guide you. I'm more going to encourage you to find the answer. And then that did get corrupted and slowly evolve into manipulating people into thinking exactly the way he wanted them to think. And it's a fine line between that, hey, how do you think the world works? Let's have a conversation about it so that you can find the answer, and leading someone to the answer that you want them to have. So going from being a teacher to being a manipulator, it's like that. At some point, he made a conscious decision to cross over into ask only the questions that will get the answers I want. Show only the thought processes that will lead people to. And you're right, it's a very deliberate, like, that is his way of interacting with his followers, and that is exactly the outcome that he's trying to go for, is to basically shape people into thinking the way he wants them to think.
Yeah, during like after learning what he was like as like a teacher, and that he was more like philosophical and more, I think, patient with mankind when they were like asking questions, and then knowing that he becomes what he was in the book, where he's just like trying to manipulate people, giving them commands, just like, this is how it is. And part of me wondered when that shift would have happened, like what ran out his patience, what made him so tired of waiting for people to figure out the answer, that he just started, I don't want to say giving them the answer, but like giving them his answer, his like preferred view. And I kind of wondered if that had to do, well, I think it would have happened before he was locked away in hell, because I don't know. Because I can't see him just turning into this monster as soon as he was locked. I'm still figuring it out. But basically, I know there was a part in the book where he's mentioning like his minions, essentially. I don't know what I'm gonna call them. They're his minions, and how they're not very bright. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe he just got tired of being around stupid people. And so he was just like, I'm not going to let you ask questions anymore. This is the answer. But there had to have been something before being in hell where like he made that transition. If there was another book from Lucifer's point of view, I would love to know what happened in his head.
Like, we could wicked it.
I can't say, well, if I ever do find a way to write the third book, it would largely involve Lucifer's past. Because there is a lot to it. I do think it was kind of hinted at, I can partially answer this though, because I do think it was hinted at in the books. It's at least partially due to the fact that as a result of being locked away, they sort of tried to cut Lucifer off from any form of power source that didn't flow like directly from him. So, and I think they talked about this more in the first book, that hell was sort of his creation and it was created with his powers, and they couldn't prevent him from doing that. Like they couldn't cut him off from his own power source. But being completely isolated in order to sort of find a way past that, or in order to sort of circumvent some of the barriers that had been put in that place, he needed mortals in some way. He needed to be able to get them to worship him and to give him access to their power. And so it kind of talked about in the first, I think this might have been in the first book, but it talked about how the way that people ended up in hell had a lot to do with guilt. And so in order to sort of lure souls into his realm and thereby gain power from having access to those souls, he needed to make them feel guilty enough to believe that that's where they would go. And so he was sort of like, this manipulation was sort of a lifeline for him. He needed to corrupt his own teachings and his own followers in such a way that he could sort of lure them away from his siblings and siphon power off of them. And I think that had a lot to do with it as well, because the only way to grow his power became to sort of sink into people's minds and twist them into acting the way he wanted them to act. And then by the time he had enough power to do the things he wanted to do, that was what he was doing. Like that was sort of what he had become. And so I think you're right. Like he eventually got set in his ways. There probably was something that made him feel, well, I definitely know that he felt sort of jaded prior to being locked away. I think him going to war with his siblings was definitely a result of him feeling jaded over things that had happened before that. But the really heavy manipulation sort of grew out of a necessity of him needing to have a way to lure people into his influence.
That just makes me like sad for him again, but he doesn't deserve it. Maybe he does. I don't know. I don't want to think about him.
I wonder if I could ask, because this isn't our Lucifer, is it? Or how connected to our or who we know as Lucifer on our Earth, is that connected at all?
Biblically accurate Lucifer.
Yeah.
So this Lucifer is not based on the biblical Lucifer. So I did make some distinctions when I was setting up the mythology for this world. I originally did want to base it very heavily on Christian mythology, which feels weird to say because some people are going to be like, excuse me, it's not mythology. So I did kind of move away from that because of that reason. It's largely based on like Sumerian and Babylonian interpretations. If you go back to that same time period when Christianity was kind of growing up and taking hold, at a lot of the time when those early like Samson and Delilah, like when those stories are happening, you can dig into Babylonian and Sumerian myth and find all of those other gods, which I sort of poached, I guess, borrowed for my pantheon, are sort of loosely based on a lot of those old figures. But our idea of Satan is very specifically that he was an angel. And in a lot of the biblical myth, he was like the brightest angel. He was the morning star, the carrier of light. He was sort of like God's right hand or God's favored son. And I think that personally, looking at it from a storyteller perspective, I think that depiction is to sort of set up that, fall of his, that he became too arrogant or that he turned away from the Father or whatever. And so this Lucifer is very specifically not, he wasn't an angel. He wasn't cast out of heaven in the same way that Lucifer in the Bible is. And it's very interesting because if you actually like dig into sort of the demonic hierarchy, which I did a lot of for this book. A lot of the figures that we tend to think of as different demons are actually sometimes in the Bible just the same guy. So like Beelzebub and Lucifer are sometimes the same person. So like all of those really high-ranking demons are sometimes basically just different names for Lucifer, or then depending on like which source material you're looking into or which sort of mythology you're basing it on, they become more distinct and more separated. So in this one, for what I did, the idea was that like I went with that sort of, I don't know if it was original, but I went with sort of that idea of like all those really high, powerful demons like Beelzebub and Satan and Lucifer and all that are the same guy. They're just different faces that he used at different times to get people to do different things versus them all just being separate demons.
I wonder if I may pull out another pop culture question.
I'm just
And-
gotta run to the washroom, so talk for like 2
Okay.
minutes and then I'll come back and answer. Just ask the question in a really long way.
Do you want to take? Should we just take a break? We're almost at an hour.
Yeah, we
Oh.
can take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I interrupting? I'm so sorry. I didn't
No,
want to
no,
interrupt
I
anything.
also have
No.
to pee.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Let's do that then.
Yes. me back.
Do you remember your question, Peter?
I do remember my question. My
Yes, that's the question.
is while you were saying that there, one of my thoughts is, I'm sure you're aware of the Kevin Smith film Dogma, and it was his view on religion and various beliefs all over the world. So it's a two-part question. Firstly, would you consider this to be your dogma, your view on religion and stuff? And secondly, there's a scene where Lucifer is unfurling his wings, and in my head, there's a scene in Dogma again where Alan Rickman, who's the angel, whatever his name is, Alan Rickman unfurls Metatron, yes, unfurls great big wings. Was that in your head when you were describing that scene?
So the answer to both questions is no. This is not like my interpretation of religion. My interpretation of this was a hard question to answer. The only thing I would say that probably comes from like my personal interpretation of religion is the reincarnation cycle, because I do believe in reincarnation. So reincarnation does play a role in a lot of my stories. It's a theme that does pop up over and over again, just because it is something that I believe in, and I think even arbitrary ties to some past version of yourself is an interesting story hook. But I definitely didn't break down my personal beliefs. The hell is very heavily based on Dante's Inferno. I think I've talked about this a few times. I'm a huge fan of Dante's Divine Comedy, not just Inferno, although it is both the best and most popular of the three. It's very heavily based on Inferno. It's very heavily based on Greek myth. All of the rivers in hell are the rivers from Hades, from Greek mythology. All of the things, the special properties that the rivers have are Greek mythology accurate as far as I know. So each of those, I think the river Phlegethon actually being on fire was me. It's not technically in mythology a river that's on fire. It's just a boiling river. So that I did change, but in terms of the Styx being the river of hate, the Lethe being the river of memory, all that kind of stuff is from Greek mythology. Even the hierarchy of the angels is very heavily based on just a deep dive into, again, the mythology of the Bible and how the various hosts or houses of the angels are described. So like cherubim and seraphim and all that kind of stuff. None of that came from my brain. That all just came from established literature, I guess you would say. So like it was very deliberately based in sort of ancient myth and not necessarily my personal philosophy. The unfurling of the wings is just kind of a thing that I think of when I think of demons. Or so when you think of, also, if it came from anywhere, there's a scene in Inferno when they reach the lowest level of hell. In Inferno, Satan is actually frozen in the lake. I believe it's it might actually be the Cocytus that he's frozen in. And he is essentially frozen waist deep in the lake with two figures in his claws and his wings spread behind him. So I think it's just a very common, like when you think of a demon or when you think of a scary like creature or whatever, you think of that moment of unfurling the wings. So I definitely don't think it came from Dogma.
It is a very cool image in your head, though, the wings unfurling and being like... Urgh.
It's very cinematic when you think of it, like in your brain.
I have a question for book club people. Did we plan to go through like after the summary that we always go through like a bunch of questions? Did we plan to do that?
We don't.
Because if not, okay. No, it's fine. It's just I'm like about the book and the characters. Like I did make notes on characters I did not like.
Anything you guys want to talk about,
Yeah.
go for it. I can be quiet for a few minutes while you guys talk.
No, that's totally fine. I just like wasn't sure
Yeah,
how much we
didn't
were
know what
sticking
it
to
is.
like our usual script. So I have like favorite quotes and scenes
Yeah.
and this
I feel
character I didn't like.
I feel like because this is a special episode, it's just kind of we're just gonna go with the flow and do whatever.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
want to know who you hated. Tell
Yeah.
me who you
Give
hated.
us the tea.
Well, I kind of wish I had like watched our first episode again just to see because I don't know if we did the characters that we liked disliked in the first episode because I feel like it's going to be the same because it's a recurring character and
Is it Lucifer?
no, okay, so Lucifer would be like the obvious choice, right? Because he's a dick. We've established that, but like he's a complex dick, and I can respect that. Um, oh, where'd it go? It was I can't find it right now. His name was Kamuli, I think. Is that it?
Oh yeah, I know that
He's
guy.
that guy's, I think, kind of shit.
He
I
seems very
didn't like
angry.
him. He's very I can't find the sticky note. That's not fair.
I
Oh, I found it.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure the introduction to that character in the first book is that I think they're like in Kaylee's tent and he like spits on the ground, and that's that. There was because I remember there was a scene where like a character spit on the ground and got in trouble, and it was that was him. That was Kamuli. That was that guy.
I was trying to remember like what their crimes were and how like each character ended up in hell because I was like he probably definitely deserves it because I've forgotten now. But I wrote that like I find him as a character to be like a very childish, very quick to like point fingers and accuse everyone but himself. He's just an agitating character to read. He's selfish, ill-tempered, full of himself, complete opposite of Sullard. I don't know why Sullard's with this fool. That's how I ended that. I was so mad. It's like, you deserve better, Sillard. What's wrong with you? Why are you with this guy? Of all the guys, this guy? Come on. Anyways, that's the one character
There's
I chose to hate throughout the whole
there's
book.
not a lot of honestly, if you're gonna hate one of them, he's the best choice, personally. There's not a lot of dating options in hell, you know?
I
Guess
did
it's
want to
fair.
ask, is there a thing between Kamuli and Sulard?
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Yes.
If
Do
you
love that for
remember
them.
in the first book, I believe it was that Sillard was crushed by the demon Morrill in the city. And that was how they found out that if you die in an earlier ring of hell, you sort of reincarnate, air quotes, into the next level, like you reconstitute into the next level up. And Camuli actually insisted on leaving the ship and going into the prison lands in order to try and rescue Sullard. And then when you see them again in the second book, they're both in the same prison because, of course, that was the inevitable conclusion, was that he was going to get captured.
Which like
But yeah,
I oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say they absolutely are an item. Like they're if love exists in hell, that's what they have.
I think that was his only redeemable quality that I could see, his loyalty to Sullard. Like, good on you for keeping your man safe, but work on yourself while you're in hell because your personality is trash. Whatever.
Ironically, I think Camuli feels the same way about himself, that Sullard is like the only good thing about him. So I think that's one of the reasons why he's so protective of him.
That's sweet in a way.
I
But
don't know.
also,
Oh,
like
you go.
the end of the book, spoilers. Everyone finished the book, right? At the end of the book, um, I know they're given the chance to ascend essentially into heaven. And I forgot where I was going to go with this. I know that Sullard and Camuli decide to stay in hell, and that part also made me upset. Because in a way, I think despite whatever their crimes were, I don't remember them. I'm sure if I did, I'd be like, actually, I know Sullard's wasn't terrible. He sold his daughter. And I think, he did it to benefit her, to sell her into like a better life. I can't fault him for that, can I? But I think of all people, he definitely should have ascended. Knowing his personality, I get that he wanted to stay and help out as much as he could. Although I worry that because of who he is, he'll just stay in hell forever because he's gonna be like, there's more people I can help. I just wish that the characters, like if I could give advice to one character, if I could give advice to all of the characters, because that's like one of the things we would do, is I would just tell them like, you did enough. You can ascend. It's time. You fought a whole war in hell for the sake of the mortal realm. Like you did your part. You've redeemed yourself. You can go. Even if I don't like you, you can go.
Go and help some people in heaven.
Yes. This is why I couldn't be like, God deciding everyone's fate. Because I'd be like, I don't like you. You got to stay down there a little longer. But like they did their job. They did it well. They should just allow themselves some peace, even if they do decide to become like those Avenger angels. That's cool. But I would not want to do that for the rest of my lifetime. I would definitely go for the reincarnation route.
I had to look up my notes because I remembered Sullard, the reason why he was in hell, but I couldn't remember the reason why Camille was in hell. And it was just kind of one of those damned by circumstances sort of things. He was raised by the church, but he ran away because his family was poor, and he basically was part of a gang. And then he was eventually mistaken as a member of the resistance and killed for committing a crime that he didn't. It says he was tried and killed for crimes that he did and did not commit. In my notes.
Schrodinger's crimes.
He committed those crimes, but not that time.
Not all of the
else.
crimes. Yeah, not all of the crimes that he was killed for were ones that he actually committed.
Okay, well.
But the main reason why the two of them decided to stay was just because the angels told them that they would change, like that the nature of their relationship would change, and I don't think they were ready to give up on that relationship at the time. I think they wanted some time to just be in that relationship before they had to, because they didn't outright say you're gonna get reincarnated and you won't necessarily know each other, but that like essentially once they make the agreement to step out of because. And again, I don't know how clearly this comes through because I was not as good at doing this back then as I am now. But the idea was that in order to draw power off of the souls that he had trapped, Lucifer had essentially separated the souls in hell from the incarnation cycle. So he's actually fucking up the universe by doing that. It wasn't supposed to be that way. And then when they go back, when they leave, they would essentially re-enter that cycle. So they're essentially giving up the essence of who they are to become someone else, and I think Camille and Sullard just didn't want to do that at the time.
Lucifer's daughter, Zilia, I think is how. So she inherits essentially hell. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the book really gets into it, but does she also plan to keep like disrupting the reincarnation cycle? Like, is she planning to keep the humans, like their souls, in hell for her own power?
This is one of the reasons why this series really needs a third book. No, I don't. I think that I don't think this is really explained well in the book, but I don't think it's a spoiler to say it. The reason why the angels were able to go into that part of hell and be like, hey, you can essentially decide to come and be reincarnated now, is that she's kind of lifted that like barrier, the sort of like chokehold that Lucifer had. She wants the realm. She wants to have control over like that sort of physical plane of existence, but she doesn't need the souls. So she hasn't really gone to heaven and been like, hey, you guys can come down here and do this thing. But she's just kind of conveniently not noticed that the angels are like sneaking souls out of hell, essentially. So she's like, I'm going to allow this to happen.
There's another question I had about a moment in the book. It's Asuk, Asuk.
I think it was Asuk, was how I
Asuk.
usually said it.
So it goes to Asuk's bit, and Asuk's chief has been killed. And there's a line which I made a note of, which might be my favourite line of the book. The war clans of Vesald had spent several centuries perfecting their insults. Are they Scottish?
Well, they were it's funny because I again, because I was less good at this sort of thing than I used to be. Each of the four kingdoms within the Dreamers Do Lie books are sort of loosely based on another culture. And Asuk's people were like basically Vikings.
That's kind of us.
So,
We're sort of Vikings.
Pretty close, yeah. They were kind of
excellent line.
but I mean, it's an apt comparison because like they were kind of like that general idea of actually the more I think about it, the more it does kind of sound Scottish. Like they're loosely affiliated clans that live in a harsh land. The Scottish Highlands would be like the perfect way to envision the area that they come from. And they were essentially a race of mercenaries because they didn't really have anything else to do.
Right, that kind of describes the Viking incursions into Scotland and how they kind of kicked the crap out of us.
Yeah, I don't remember all of them. My God, let me open the note. Because one of them was based on Rome, essentially. That one's probably really easy to
Is that I've got let me just please check my notes.
So
Onrath?
Onrath. Yeah.
Onrath,
Onrath was basically the Romans. And then Erant was like loosely based on like Persia, like ancient Persia. And then Niwar was more just kind of a society that was dominated by religion, essentially. They didn't really have as much of a basis as the other ones. And it was just because I had a less sort of deft hand at expressing concepts. So I did use a bunch of shorthands for coming up with things for I obviously tried to make everything my own, but it's definitely a little bit more transparent that they're kind of loosely based on different real world societies.
I'm looking at the map of the book. This map. I don't think anyone could, there we go. The map. And I don't know if maybe I sped through some things, but like were there places in the book that maybe you had stories you wanted to talk about but didn't have the time to do it? Like I'm looking at Cave of Horrors. I don't know. Were we in the Cave of Horrors? Is that where Lucifer showed up?
That's where Lucifer came out, yeah.
Okay.
At the beginning of the book. There's
That was a
definitely
fun scene.
places there's definitely places on the map that did not make it into the book. Just because again, I was less good at this sort of thing back then. But the Cave of Horrors is where that was one of my favorite scenes actually. It was the first scene of the second book that I wrote. I can't remember if it's the first scene of the book, but it was the first scene I wrote for the book. Was him basically arriving in the mortal world.
I found that part really funny, especially when they're like, "Here's the horse, please ride it." And the horse is freaking out.
He's like, "Yeah, that's not gonna happen."
I also want to ask about the art in the book because there's these beautiful, intricate wings. Was that Molly as well? And did you have the idea to be like, okay, we're going to put that image at the start of every chapter?
Those are stock photos, so I can't. The map is hand drawn. I drew the map for both Dreamers Do Lie and Life Is But a Dream. I switched to a map making program for Arvalia Chronicles, but I hand drew the maps in both of these books. But everything else is stock photos. I just don't have the artistic talent. And it was my idea to do the demon wings in the first book and then the angel wings in the second book.
I'm going to say you did them. History will record it as
I
saying Megan
mean,
drew the wings.
I'd love to take credit, but yeah, those are around the time that I started publishing this duology was when I kind of discovered stock photo sites. There are various different sites throughout the internet that where you can get royalty-free stock images, and they are the lifeline of indie publishers, essentially.
Maybe not a direct sequel or a book 3, but have you thought about doing a From the Worlds of kind of story?
There's this vast map of all of the stories in my head. And it's interesting because there's a timeline. So the Celestial Serenade is the beginning of the timeline. It's like the prologue of the vast multiverse that exists in my head. And Dreamers Do Lie is the end. It's like kind of like the epilogue. So it's sort of taking place in the aftermath of all these other stories that have happened in my brain that don't exist on paper yet. And so there is sort of in my brain, there's this thing that I refer to as the epilogues, which are sort of things that take place as a result of the main sort of through line in the multiverse. And there are events that tie in heavily with, again, there is a third story to this. I just haven't figured out how to tell it in a way that you wouldn't read it and be like, what is this? Who are you? What are you trying to tell me? So I haven't written it yet, mostly because I haven't figured out how to write it yet. But there's more to this story. A lot of it is prequel, but some of it is sequel. That's the other reason I haven't written it, is that it's a dual timeline story, and those are always very difficult to write, especially when there's a like 20,000 year gap or 50,000 year gap in between one of the lines and one of the other lines.
Which is another. I'm already fearful that I just shot an arrow directly into your brain. Maybe not directly into it, maybe just kind of grazed you. And there's another question I'm desperate to ask, which I know will be like right between the eyes, and I'm trying so hard not to ask it.
Just ask it. Just rip off the tape really quickly.
Rip off the tape? Okay. You're currently working on a series called Ghost Path. That is your current writing project. And I don't wish to describe it incorrectly, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Ghost Path is a junkyard where all the things from different galaxies gather?
It's sort of like the... If you think about an organism, a living organism, and the complexity of the system, like even if you just look at our own bodies, and a prime example of this right now, our bodies work a certain way, and then we have an immune system which is designed to function around things that aren't functioning properly. And so if an invader gets in there, your immune system is designed to go to work and do whatever thing. But in a complex organism, things go wrong. Like my immune system does not function properly and it attacks my thyroid. And so I have an autoimmune disorder that we refer to as Graves' disease. So if you think of the universe as the same thing, as a complex system of organisms that function on a set of rules and that has contingencies in place in order to prevent, say, a mistake from becoming, catastrophic and destroying the entire multiverse. The cosmic junkyard in which Ghost Path takes place is basically the recycle bin, where everything that's dangerous or a really bad mistake and could essentially explode the universe and all of its twins is sort of thrown into the garbage bin and sort of self-contained within a thing that it can't get out of. And it's essentially like the multiverse's immune system functioning, if that makes sense.
I feel like that's as much as I can ask and as much as I can say without spoiling upcoming works. And I know you wouldn't do that, and I don't want to.
I mean, you can ask the question. I can't promise I'll answer it, but you can ask your question.
I just feel like, and I don't know if this is planned, but maybe things from Dreamers Do Lie might end up towards junkyard adjacent? I'm going
They're
more high
not
pitched.
they're not directly related to each other, if that's your
Okay,
question.
that was my question.
Yeah, the ghost path is not located in the same like pocket dimension as the hell from Dreamers Do Lie. They're
Okay.
unrelated to each other. The hell that exists in this world is sort of a creation of the gods of this world. Like they sort of carved a pocket out of the universe to put Lucifer in, and then he landscaped it essentially. And then the ghost path exists as like its own dimension, as like its own universe within the multiverse of the universe, but there's like a giant firewall over it that's supposed to prevent people from getting into it, but doesn't always work.
Okay, that was, and again, I knew it might have been massively spoilery, and I didn't want to.
I kind of thought that was where you were going, but no, they're not directly related to each other.
Okay, because I just find multiverse works so fascinating. I wish I had the brain to be like, okay, this is from here, 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 and here, put it together here, and I just can't. So when I hear about multiverses, I'm like, ooh, where does this fit there? And it's just fascinating to me. So I wanted to find out if/where Dreamers Do Lie.
My brain is one of those giant like murder boards with all the red threads and different colors and just big black scribbles everywhere. That's my brain.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Just like Megan planning out the multiverse. It's just like a board and like this book and this red string goes here.
It's funny because when I wrote this book, I don't want to say the multiverse didn't exist. I'd like to think it's always existed in my brain. I didn't have as clear a picture of it back then as I do now. And what's interesting is trying to write Ghost Path has been interesting because it does tie into various aspects of the multiverse that I haven't written about yet. So for me, they're like referring to events that I know about that will shape the ultimate picture of the multiverse, but hopefully when other people read them, they're just seemingly random events that don't feel like they match up with anything else, which is kind of what I'm going for. So they have meaning, but in order to catch the meaning, you basically have to be in my brain. But you don't need the meaning in order to make sense of the narrative. It's just kind of like an Easter egg, if that makes sense. And it's kind of the same with Dreamers Do Lie. Is like I wrote this book, and I had a sense of like who Lucifer was and how he got to where he was. But I know more about it now than I did back then. I have a lot more nuance. I could sit down and do like, here's the 1 hour story of Lucifer and do like a documentary on his life. And I couldn't have done that at the time that I published, which is an interesting thing to me. So there is a larger like world that Dreamers Do Lie does fit in, but also a lot of the stuff that happens isn't related to this particular story. It's just kind of background for some of the gods, essentially. Like, and I wanted it to feel like at the beginning of Dreamers Do Lie, like the gods had a long history before coming there and making that world. So I tried to weave that into the story, and then I've just kind of filled in the background of like what their backstory is. So knowing it it wouldn't change anything necessarily about the book, but there are aspects of Lucifer's history that I do think at least clarify why he ended up being the way he was. If that makes... That was a long-winded way of saying you're not really missing anything, but there's like a 4-hour deep dive that you could do about Lucifer's past that might happen someday.
I've got all evening.
It's like the DLC.
Oh, I have a question. I feel like I'm all over the place with my questions. I didn't organize
That's
them.
okay.
Oh well. So I read your author's notes before I started reading the book, and then I read them again after. And there was one thing you said where you said you realized, well, I'll ask the question. When did you realize that you were able to write fighting scenes? Because that was like a comment you made where it's like you just had this moment where you realized you were really good at writing fighting scenes, or you've gotten better at writing.
So
I wanted
it's
to know like
interesting.
which part of the war.
It's interesting because I actually realized that I could write fighting scenes during the Celestial Serenade. But what happened was I had written Dreamers Do Lie, and I had written like 5 chapters, I think, of Life is But a Dream, and then I had kind of given up on it because I didn't feel like I knew how to do what I wanted to do. And so I started writing the Celestial Serenade. And I got through the first book of that, which eventually became the first 3 books, because that was when I started dividing my stuff into trilogies. And I started writing the second book of that, and I had gotten through, I want to say I had gotten through at least one really, really rough draft of that second book, which then became books 4 to 6 because I write in trilogies now. And then I was in the process of starting to edit that, and I kind of realized, oh, I know how to write Life is But a Dream now. I actually understand how to do what I need to do. And then, so I kind of set the Celestial Serenade aside and went back and fixed up Dreamers Do Lie and actually finished writing Life is But a Dream. So it was kind of in that in-between space of like, I was working on the Celestial Serenade and I was working on Life is But a Dream kind of at the same time. And it was really like the first book had been fully written, but I did come back and beef it up again. Like a lot of the fight scenes in that book too got like a glow up because I had kind of figured out what to do with them instead of just making a lot of my early fight scenes are just, and then steel clashed against steel and people are running around in the background and it's not very interesting. So I sort of learned to put fight choreography in, if that makes sense.
It does, because I don't think, I mean, if you asked me to write a fight scene right now, it would probably be like, and this person got punched in the face, and that person got kicked. It wouldn't
It's
be
really
very interesting.
hard. It's really hard. And I don't do it as much now because I'm a lot more used to it. It's kind of funny because I still don't feel like I'm really good at fight scenes, but I'm a lot better at them than I used to be. So I used to write them in layers where the first layer was basically just like fighting in the background and all of the story bits happening around it. And then I would go back during the editing process and put in the fight choreography because it was all missing from the first draft. So if anybody ever read like the very first draft of some of these fights, they're total garbage. But then I've kind of learned how to put the fight choreography into my first draft now. Sorry. The more I talk, the more I cough. So if you go through and read like the early drafts of the Aravalia Chronicles, the fight scenes are a lot more in depth. And like I said kind of earlier, the deepest tragedy is that I kind of learned how to handle those big army fight scenes while I was crafting the Aravalia Chronicles. So I definitely think one of the weakest parts of Life is But a Dream, unfortunately, is the big clashing of the armies, because I just didn't really quite know how to handle it as well back then as I do now.
I don't like reading through Life is But a Dream. I read it and it is a really intense, really intricate fight scene, and that I would never say about it what you just said about it.
That the fight scenes were like the weakest part.
Yeah.
Once you read the Aravalia Chronicles, you might change your mind about that. But to me, yeah, it was like, I think Jam said earlier, like, I wish this had been 2 books. I definitely think if I was writing it now, it would have, because I would have wanted to expand. The war is very what I would think of as zoomed out. So I kind of tried to, I'm a very character-oriented writer, and that's still true now. And so I tried to put a lot of character moments into the war and sort of focus on what individual characters were doing. But because I didn't really have a deft handle on showing background at the same time, a lot of the war actually kind of takes place off camera or in summary in the beginning and ending of chapters. It's kind of almost like, if you think of it in terms of a movie, like the characters are having these really intense, really intricate moments, and the war is kind of happening in the background scenes. Like, it's like, you know, happening blurred in the background and not really ever in focus. And I think if I was writing it now, I would have a better understanding of how to bring it more in focus and make it less blurred and make it feel more like the fighting is happening in front of the reader. If it doesn't feel that way to you guys, good, because I don't want it to feel that way. But as a writer, knowing what I can do now versus what I could do back then, I just feel like I can make it so much better. And I feel this way about like all, like, if I rewrote the Celestial Serenade today, it would be better. If I started over at the beginning of the Aravalia Chronicles today, it would be better. Like, that's kind of the eternal curse of a writer, is that the better you get at your craft, the more you can look back at your old work and be like, oh, this sucks now because I could do this so much better, even though that doesn't make that it's bad. It just means if I started writing it now, it would be better.
I have a question about that actually. Is that a thing that authors do where, like, let's say you have your debut novel and then 40 years later you're like, actually, I'm going to rewrite that? Is that a thing that authors do and then like republish the newer updated version of the first or like whatever that book was?
I genuinely don't know. I think most of the time once it's published, you're just kind of like, okay, it's out there. I do know that the woman who wrote 50 Shades of Grey eventually went back and like rewrote it from the guy's perspective, and I feel like that was very much her essentially doing that, like essentially glowing up her original thing and writing it air quotes better. I don't know if it's better. I haven't read it. I haven't read either of them. But I feel like that would be that. I will say that all of my initial novels, so there's a certain point at which this stops being true. So the first Island of Lost Forevers book, I rewrote that completely from scratch after it had already been written once. So that book was written twice. The first half of Crossroads of Frozen Eternity was the same thing. It had been half written. I figured out how to write book twos at a certain point. So half of that had been written and then abandoned, and then I came back and rewrote the whole thing. So the third book of the Mystical Island trilogy was only written once, but the first book and a half were written twice. Dreamers Do Lie was written twice. The first half of Life Is But a Dream was written twice. The first 6 books of the Celestial Serenade were written twice. And then after that, I kind of figured out how to do a rough draft at a level where it only needed an editing pass and not an entire rewrite. So a lot of my the first half of my library was essentially written twice. So I think you kind of end up doing it before publication. And then you just kind of also have to, like, I've talked about this on my blog a little bit. You kind of have to accept at a certain point that because creativity is a cycle, and I'm sure you as an artist know the same thing. It's probably the same with your artwork, where you learn a new skill and then you apply it to your work, and then you look back at your older work and you're like, oh, I didn't know how to do that when I made that. I could do it again now and apply that, but is it worth it? How much more benefit am I getting from redoing it just to apply this new concept that I learned? And I think you just have to get to a point where you just kind of accept that was my skill level at the time, and that was the art that I made when I was at that skill level. And if I don't want to just keep making one book over and over, I just have to kind of move on and apply it to the next book. And that's kind of like where I live with that idea.
That's true. I didn't think of it that way. I try not to look at my old artwork. I'm like, yeah, I grew as an artist. That looks disgusting. Let's move on.
It's very much the same. Like, I don't do a lot of reading of my older work for the same reason, because I'm like, oh my god, this is embarrassing. I could do this so much better now. But there's this real danger of, because I talk to so many writers who are like, I've been rewriting the same book for 10 years, and it's like, at a certain point, how much benefit are you getting from rewriting that manuscript again? You can start moving commas around, you can start applying like new concepts that you've learned, but in the end, it's like the ship of, I think it's what, the ship of Theseus or whatever it is, where whenever it falls apart, they bring in a new part and they put it back. Like, you can do that forever. That's the cycle of creativity. But then you'll never create anything except for one thing, and it'll still never be perfect because you'll still get to the end of it and be like, oh, but now I could do this other thing better. And so for me, it was a lot about just coming to terms with the fact that the farther on I get in my career, the more I'm going to hate my early books. And that's just kind of how it's going to be. But I was proud of them.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I was proud of them when I wrote them, and I try to hold on to that. Like, I'm still very proud of Dreamers Do Lie and Life is But a Dream. I can accept that if I wrote it today, it would be a better work overall. But I'm still very proud of them. I'm still very proud of what I did with them and of what they taught me, because if I hadn't written Life is But a Dream, a lot of the stuff in the Celestial Serenade, which is these giant space fights, I never would have been able to do that. And I definitely never would have been able to write, there's like I said, there's a giant, like, third of a book, half of a book long war sequence at the end of the Aravalia Chronicles that would not have existed if I hadn't written Life is But a Dream, because I would have just had no idea where to start.
I know time is pressing on. We're coming up on 2 hours being live, and poor Megan's and Jam's voices are probably cracking. We don't have a casting for this one, did we?
No, I realized.
Honestly, there were so many.
No.
There were so many characters. I was like, I want to cast that one, but then this other character is probably more important. We got to cast that one, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, halfway through the book, I wrote down, these are the characters we're gonna cast, and then I read the other half of the book. I was like, but these characters.
There are a
Yeah.
lot of really good characters.
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, Megan, but very, 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 very quickly, when you were writing this book, who did you see in roles? Like, did you see any actors in roles? Like Kaylee, for example. Who did you see as Lucifer?
I'm so bad to ask this question because I can never answer it. First of all, I don't know a lot of real world actors. To begin with, like, I don't follow a lot of actors. So I don't even really know a lot of actors by name. But I also don't tend to visualize. There's only like a handful of my characters in like across all of my series that I can actually answer this for, and I have no idea who any of the characters in this series would be cast as, like, as real people. It doesn't even really occur to me to think about that when I'm writing it, which is a shitty answer. I'm so sorry.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That means if it was picked up by a TV network or some Hollywood person, you just hire a bunch of new upstart actors.
Yeah.
Give them careers.
Excellent.
It would be great.
And Zendaya.
I do feel like retroactively, because this show did not exist at the time, but the guy who played Lucifer in the show Lucifer would make a good Lucifer. Like, I always thought of him as my Lucifer when I was different character arc because he got redemption. Spoilers. But definitely, like, his voice and his mannerisms were very much the way I imagined my Lucifer. So whenever I was watching that show, I was always like, yeah, that's my Lucifer.
I could hear his voice a lot. Like, there's a moment in the book when he's lounging across a throne, and I'm like, that is absolutely that fella from the Lucifer show. I could see him doing that.
The voice is perfect. Just absolutely just so perfect.
I have not seen the show. I've wanted to watch it, and then I just forgot about it. Is it good? Should I watch it?
Okay. It's very good. Season 3 strays a little bit. Season 3 strays a little bit because I think it was their longest season and they didn't have to be tight with the narrative, but season 4 is peak. There he is.
I was
that's
because I've got the screen on behind me and he popped up in the stream. I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing here?
Terrifying. It's worth it. It's worth it to watch season 4. I felt like season 4 was peak, but yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
But that show didn't exist at that time, and that actor wasn't a big actor at the time that I wrote the book, so that's 100% retroactive.
I think the big problem with Lucifer, and the show, not your Lucifer, Megan, is it suffered from being on a broadcast network. Like, if it had been on a HBO or something, I feel that would have
Yeah.
helped it a lot.
If had like Game of Thrones.
That's why
treatment.
season 4 is peak, because they went to streaming. They went to Netflix with seasons 4, 5, and 6. Now season 6 I'm not too fond of, but 4 and 5 were pretty good. And instantly in season 4, you can tell that they embraced the idea of being on stream only, because 1, they start swearing a lot, and 2, that's when you start getting the shots of Lucifer's butt. Just saying.
Oh.
There's a lot of Lucifer butt in season 4, and I'm not sad about it.
So I don't really remember what happened in season 4, but like I just googled Lucifer season 4 to see if it could like kickstart my memory, and it is just him shirtless.
Oh yeah, there's a very early on in season 4, there's a scene where like he's standing, I think it was season 4. One of the seasons has a scene where he's standing in front of a mirror, and they very, very carefully blocked it so that you can see his chest and you can see his back and his butt, but you can't see his dick because it's hidden by the edge of the mirror. And I'm like, that must have been super fun to get him in that position. And then don't move, because then the camera's gonna see too much, my guy.
Imagine the set blocking on that. Okay, you stand here, and can you still see it? Yep. Can you still see it? Yep. Can you still see it? Yep.
Inch the camera a little bit more. Yeah, no, I just imagine that was a very interesting. And I think either season 4 or season 5 was filmed like post-pandemic too, so that had to be very interesting.
I only got to about season 2 on that show, and I liked it. It was very good, but
Season 4
so
is
stick with it.
Season 4 is so worth it. Season 3 I really hated the end of, but season 4 was so good.
Do we want, before we get out of here, because I feel like we should wrap up shortly, do we want to rate Life is But a Dream?
Hell yeah, we have to. It's the
It is our
rules.
job.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
You.
Me?
Yeah, I
Yes,
think you should
you.
go first.
Well, every single book of Megan's that I have read, I have rated 5 stars, because that's as high as you can go on like Storygraph and stuff. So it's 10 for me, because I love Megan's writing. She's one of my favorite authors. And something that, like, I don't know if it's started to annoy Jam and Peter yet, but every time we read like a mystery-ish novel, I always reference back to last year's episode where you were talking about how like you start laying the groundwork and that you don't really notice it until you go back and you're like, oh shit, she was telling us from the beginning. Because I remember like when I first reread Dreamers Do Lie, it was for that episode, and like my mind went because I just realized all the shit that I missed the first time I read it. And so every time we've read a book that's a mystery, I've always referenced it, and I'm like, why can't they be as good as Megan? I'm like, Megan's was so good, and then I read this piece of shit and it was so bad. And I get so angry, and I'm like, Megan needs to teach them how to write a mystery, because you can't just randomly have a child kill another child. Anyways.
Oh my god! It happened
that
one
happen?
time.
Did that happen in one of the
did.
books?
That
It did,
happened.
and it made me so mad. It was so bad. It just, the ending came out of nowhere. Nothing, the groundwork was not laid. It was just,
I have to.
oh my god.
I have to
Anyways.
admit, I do think about that every time we read a mystery book as well. It's like,
Yeah.
Right?
Megan laid the breadcrumbs like this, and it was perfect, and we figured it out. And then we get to another mystery book, and it's like, there were no breadcrumbs. This just came from the sky. What the fuck?
And so, like, it's so
Every-
funny to hear Megan talk about it now, to be like, oh, like, I could have done so much better. And it's like, even, like, something that she thinks could be, like, so much better is still a million times better than other things we've read from, like, well-established authors. And I just, so, yeah. Oh, her stuff is always, like, 10 out of 10 for me, because I love Megan's stuff.
This is our 13th episode. Obviously, the first episode doesn't count because Megan was there, but every episode since then, we have referenced Dreamers Do Lie as like a watermark, and books are either like, it's normally how far below Dreamers Do Lie
Yeah.
they are, and how we hope how we wish they were as good, how we reached the line of Dreamers Do Lie.
Pretty much. So.
I'm sorry that I ruined other books for you. It's interesting though that you say that, because I found, this was like way long ago now, but I found a whole conversation, and I think it happened on Reddit. It was in reference to Westworld, because there's this big thing that's been happening a lot in, I think, TV lately, where everything has to have a big twist. Like every show, it's like at the end of the season, there's going to be this big twist, and you're not going to see it coming. And it's like they build whole shows around this idea of the big twist. And that was what I did with Dreamers Do Lie. I mean, it was built around a big twist. But I think the reality of the situation is, and I think I mentioned this the last time too, if you lay the groundwork for a proper twist, some people are going to figure it out. Like, it's inevitable that the clues are going to be there, and some people are going to be observant enough to put the clues together. And so what do you do about those people? And my answer is nothing. Like, you put enough other interesting information in the book to keep them interested in it, even though they may have already figured it out. But you can't just make something happen out of nowhere so that the twist works, because then the twist falls flat too. And it was this whole big thing where people were discussing the difference between Westworld and the early seasons of Game of Thrones, not the later seasons of Game of Thrones. And they were saying, like, there was an episode of Westworld that they reshot because fans figured out what the twist was going to be. So they literally changed the plot so that people wouldn't know about it. And it's like, you can't do that. It has to have a logical thread running all the way through. And if some people spot that, well, you can't prevent that. Like, that is like the thing about storytelling is I don't want to spoil anything because some of you may watch this show, but there was an episode of Strange New Worlds this season that I totally nailed the twist. Totally nailed it. And Ghost Pepper looked at me afterwards and he was like, How the fuck did you figure that out? And I was like, there was one line that a character said, and instantly I just knew that twist. And if they had changed it because of the possibility that I might figure it out, it would have made the episode suck.
I feel like even if like you do figure out the twist, when you find out you're right, the payoff is still there.
Yes.
Like,
it feels so good.
Right? Especially like you said, like it was just like the one line and you're like, oh shit, I got it. I'm locked in. So like if the twist is very obvious and it's kind of like, okay, whatever. But if you do it well enough that people are able to be proud of the fact that they figured out the twist, who cares if they figured it out? That's awesome. That just means you have a captive audience who's paying attention.
One of the things they've done for Doctor Who over the years, various series, is they filmed full-on scenes outside, like, oh, I hope we don't meet X person, and fans have been on set like, oh, they're talking about X character, and it turns out to be completely wrong. Like, they filming those scenes literally just to fake people out.
That's
doesn't seem like a good waste of.
I mean,
that's
I can
BBC money.
Sometimes I can see why they do it, because they did that with they did that with Star Wars too when they were filming The Empire Strikes Back. Actually, nobody knew. Spoiler for that movie. Nobody even filming knew that the twist was going to be that Darth Vader was Luke's father. Nobody knew until they handed the voiceover script to, I can't think of his name.
James Earl Jones.
Nobody knew until they handed the voiceover script to him. And then even he was like, what? Is this the real thing? Like, is this what it's really going to be? So I can understand in a world where, you know, people are camping out on like movie and TV show sets and they're trying to keep it secret, I can understand filming misleading scenes. But what I wouldn't understand is swapping one of them out at the last minute because somebody speculated on something. Like, you've got to give, like, the people, it's like you were saying, the people who get that payoff earned that payoff. They were detail oriented. They paid attention to all the little things that you put in there, which is a good thing. You want to reward that behavior.
I think that's like one of my favorite parts about like any series is just following the threads and the theories and all of the discussion around like, well, this thing might lead to this, and this is what I think is going on. It's just like it's the best. It's so fun and exhilarating. And I think any TV show or series, if they just changed the plot because people were figuring it out, I'd be pissed. I would drop that immediately. Be like, what the fuck? I did all this work and I was so invested, and you went and did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never ended up watching. I was really interested in Westworld until I read about that, and I was like, well, I'm not going to watch it now. Like, what would be the point? And I also, oops, sorry. I was just going to say, I also am one of those like detail-oriented readers. Like, I'm scanning everything. Like, I actually read quite slowly because I'm absorbing all of the details. Like I know people who read 2-3 times faster than me, but I don't care because I want to absorb everything about the situation that I'm reading about because I want to catch those details. So for me, if you have put details in there, I'm going to notice them. And if you are changing the story so that the things that I notice don't matter, then I'm going to get mad.
I was gonna say, I noticed. I know I've said this before, but it's not the first. Obviously, not the first show to have long-running plot threads. But Deep Space Nine was built for a streaming era that didn't exist because there were so many plot details and bits and bobs figured out that if you go back and rewatch it, you can pick it all up. And back in the 90s, you couldn't just be like, oh, I'm going to miss that episode. Oh, I'll watch it on Netflix. You couldn't do that. If you missed that week's episode with DS9, you were scunnered. And I think that's really interesting and has helped a lot of shows in long-running plots and development. DS9 is good. It's such a good show.
I'm just gonna pull us back real quick because I know we were doing
Yes.
ratings.
Sorry,
I'm giving the book an 8.5. Peter.
Yes. I know this is strictly on me, and this is literally a me thing. I'm going to give it a 9.5 because
Ooh.
there are various bits and bobs I didn't quite like. I don't know what a mage is, their magic works. I know that's on me for not knowing that kind of thing. And the rest of it is perfect. It's just me not knowing those things.
Very respectable ratings, honestly.
I'm glad you approved.
Honestly, I always want people's honest opinion. I am under no delusions that anything I've written is perfect. So if people are enjoying it, even despite it having flaws, that to me means I did my job.
I don't want to sound patronizing, but it was a great job. You did a good job.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very good job.
That is very patronizing. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think it is at all. And honestly, like for me, like I never want somebody to read my stuff and be like, "Oh yeah, it was great," when in private they're like, this was total garbage and I hated it." Like I always prefer to get somebody's honest read on it because that's how I learn what works and what doesn't work and how I improve and how I spot where I was, indulging my, desires instead of going along with what would have been better from the story and all that kind of stuff. And also art is just subjective, right? Like you might love one book that I wrote and hate another because it might just not be your thing, and that's totally fair too.
Unscheduled question. When did Life is But a Dream come out? 2020, I believe you said in the past?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, but that sounds right.
It says in here.
Yeah.
If 2025 Megan could go back and talk to 2020 Megan, what would 2025 Megan say to 2020 Megan about Dreams Do Lie and the journey of creating it and rating it? What would you rate it to past Megan?
Oh my god. I feel like I'd want to go back earlier and tell an earlier version of me to write it faster and publish it earlier. That's not a good answer. What I can safely say to my past self about this series, is that it taught me a lot of valuable lessons. This was the first novel that I wrote planned. So prior to this, um, all the books in the Mystical Island trilogy and the first, I think about 4 books in Eternity's Empire were all written just by the seat of my pants. I didn't plan them. And the original draft of Dreamers Do Lie was also written just by the seat of my pants. I didn't plan it, and there were consequences for that. So this was kind of the series that taught me about planning, about taking my time to make note about different details, and to sort of plan where I wanted to go, even if I didn't end up fully sticking to that plan all the way through. Um, the foundation of skills that I acquired, I think, from this book, even if this series like never does well or, you know, never finds its audience or whatever, what I learned from it was invaluable, and that in itself made it worth it. And also, clearly, it has fans, so it was worth it just for you guys to read it and enjoy it.
I'm president of that fan club. I'm electing myself.
Seconded.
I'm in the club. I'm happy with that.
I was going to get Jam to be vice chair because I don't want the responsibility of being vice chair. I am not mature enough for that at all.
All right, Megan, I have one more question for you as we wrap up.
Okay.
So now that we have finished the Dream Things True duology, for anyone listening at home, what book of yours should they read next?
Oh gosh, if you're a hardcore fantasy fan, the next place to go is really Eyes of a Stranger, which is the first book of the Aravalia Chronicles. It is an epic high fantasy that takes place in... Oh, Peter's got it already.
Yeah, he's on
Oh,
Molly.
yeah.
So pretty.
I know.
I am on it.
Yeah, that again, another Molly cover. She knocked it out of the park. I gave her almost no information. I'll keep this brief, but I gave her almost no information. There are 15 books in this series, so we decided to do object covers because it's impossible to do 15 character-oriented covers. And I gave her almost no information because I didn't know what she needed. And she put together that, and I was like, it got to the part where I was supposed to give her notes, and I was like, I don't have notes. It's amazing. Just do this for all of them. But it is an epic high fantasy, so it has all of like your Lord of the Rings tropes, but it takes place in a modern world. It's not urban fantasy. That's a completely different set of tropes. It is definitely more like a contemporary. It's a fantasy novel that takes place in our world. The main character, Domarin, who's plastered all over my streams, he kind of works for like the magical FBI. So, and again, it's the sort of thing where he's trying to solve a mystery that affects the whole kingdom, and it just kind of falls into his lap to deal with it. So if you like fantasy, definitely go there. If you're more of a sci-fi person, if you like space opera like me, then I would head over to The End of All Things, which is the beginning of the Celestial Serenade. It is, I'm not going to say it's hard science because it's not. I don't really understand science enough to write hard sci-fi. So it's more soft sci-fi, but it's a lot more grounded in reality. The mysticism is sort of light. There's not really magic in it, just some, sort of mystical type things. And that, again, takes place kind of on our world, kind of in space. It's got your galactic space empire. It's got your galactic war. So depending which direction you drift, that's the fork in the path. I would say go for one of those two. And again, that cover was done by Molly as well.
And it's, I held it up, and that's
It's beautiful.
the cover for it.
Can I actually ask you one more side question?
You guys can ask as many. You don't have to wrap up super quick. Ask me as many questions as you want. It's cool. I'm here.
Okay. Because this came up during one of our last book club meetings. We've read a couple sci-fi books, and I was ready to write off the whole genre because I was like, I'm not a sci-fi person. I didn't really enjoy that. And so I was wondering how much science has to be in science fiction before it's just fiction?
So it sounds like you guys may have been reading a lot of hard sci-fi, which is a bit, so there's kind of two different buckets into which sci-fi falls. There's hard sci-fi and then what I refer to as soft sci-fi, which is more where you find like your space operas and stuff. Hard sci-fi mostly focuses on the science. So if you were to look up any of the things that were happening in a hard sci-fi, theoretically it's based on all real science and the most up-to-date information. So a good sort of example of this is kind of Interstellar. They actually like brought in a mathematician to feed a bunch of information into a computer to put out a computer model of what black holes look like. And that's how we actually discovered what real black holes look like, was because that movie decided that they wanted to accurately depict a black hole, which blows my mind. That stuff's more based on actual science. I'm not saying that necessarily story doesn't matter, but anything that happens in the story has to be able to be justified by real science. It's not a genre I mind, but it's not a genre I can write because I'm not a physicist and I don't understand rocket science. And then you have your other bucket, which is where I kind of sort of prefer. Softer sci-fi tends to have the elements of space travel or ultra technology, but it doesn't really concern itself with how that technology works. So Star Trek kind of sits in the middle in between. They do whatever in Star Trek. Sometimes they have like an internal justification for how the science works, but it's not necessarily linked to real world science. And then you have like your Star Wars where stuff just works and it doesn't really matter how it works. It just works. And I sort of prefer writing within sort of in between those two spaces. And that's what Celestial Serenade is. Space operas focus a lot on characters. They tend to have these vast sweeping settings. I mean, Star Wars is the most famous example of a space opera. It has this giant setting. It takes place throughout a whole galaxy, but it focuses mostly on the interaction between certain characters, and the character drama and what's going on with those characters is kind of more important than the science or even the setting in some ways. And so that's my preferred area of sci-fi because I prefer character stories and I prefer character-oriented stories. So if you've been struggling with the sci-fi genre, I would definitely look to the softer side. Try to find something that's a lot more focused on character and a lot less concerned with how light speed travel works. And you might find a little bit more enjoyment in that.
Thank you. 'Cause yeah, I've read a few
Did
sci-fi
you ask
books and I just...
Did you ask that because you're scared I'll pick the second Hitchhiker's book next year?
No.
Definitely soft sci-fi. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is definitely not concerned with real world science.
Yeah.
Well, we've read that in The Martian, and The Martian
Yeah.
was like, oh my god,
That was a
shut up.
textbook.
The Martian
chose
was
both of
written. The Martian was written by a rocket scientist. I believe he worked for Jet Propulsion Laboratories. He worked for NASA. That's why he wrote that book.
It sounded like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything in The Martian is real science. That's how all of that would actually work. I do like the movie The Martian, but I've never
Yeah.
tried to read the book.
Oh, don't.
I'm going to stand up for the book because it does have a lot of science in it, but once you get past that, it's a fairly interesting. I think it's an
Once you
interesting
get past
story.
that, there's like 50 pages left.
That's true. He's always engineering. There's a lot of engineering in the book.
It's a good example of a hard
Yeah.
sci-fi because the science is the story. Like the character is doing science and that's the story of the book. Whereas like, not to use my own work as an example, but like in the Celestial Serenade, the Kalterans have the ability to travel faster than light, and they regularly refer to faster than light travel and delays in communication because their communications don't necessarily always move at the same speed. But it's never explained how they travel faster than the speed of light. They just do. It's a science that they have, but I don't bother myself with how it works because it would just bog down the narrative. So it's more like space magic.
Yeah.
Because I don't ever explain it, but you don't really need to know how it works in order for the story
it's
to
magic.
work.
It's fine.
One of the
I
best
like
lines Marvel ever said is in the first Thor movie when I forget which character says it, but the character says, our tech is so advanced it looks like magic to you. But then they never went back to that line.
But that's a philosophy of, it's kind of a philosophy of storytelling, right? Because some people are like, oh, what's the difference between fantasy and sci-fi? And the answer is always basically like, does your magic come from like the environment? Then it's fantasy. Does your magic come from technology? Then it's sci-fi. Is your money system gold, or is it some kind of digital credits? You know, there's one, oh, what's the guy who plays Bones in the new Star Trek?
Keith Urban?
Yes, there's literally a meme where it's like sci-fi is when Keith Urban has short hair and fantasy is when Keith Urban has long hair. And it's like, it's kind of true. Like some sci-fi isn't really concerned about the science, it just wants to be in space. There's even a genre called sword and sorcery in space.
Well, that's all
I
my
think
questions.
we should wrap up because I'm dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm dying
no.
faster now.
R.I.P. Jam.
All right, Megan.
I'm sorry.
Anything you want to shout out?
Me?
Yeah.
Just I would say, if you head over to Amazon, you can find all of my books. I'm currently publishing the Aravalia Chronicles, which we talked about. That's my big project right now. Books 7, 8, and 9 will be coming out in 2026. And December 15th, the box set for the books that came out this year will be coming out. So that's The Beast's Wicked Gleam. So every December, basically, I take the 3 books that I published from that series that year and put it out as it appeared in my head as one book, and it's like 700 pages, which is why they also get published separately. So that's happening in December. And I'm also working on another high fantasy series that takes place in a more fantasy normal world called Everyone's Child, which is going to be wrapping up next year as well. And then on Twitch, I am Starborn Striker, and I stream most Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings, unless I'm sick and dying. And you can see me go through the process of doing all this crazy shit on stream if you are interested in doing that.
And in the sprints, Megan does put up with me and Joe, which is a lot.
Yeah, you guys do try to stop the productivity quite often.
But with love. Always with love.
All right, Peter. You want to go next?
Should we wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to speak for my colleagues here, my friends here, my besties here. We love you, and we're so grateful for your time today, Megan. We know how busy you are, but you would
Glad
come
to
on
be
a
here.
second time to talk to us about your works is truly incredible, and we're very grateful to you and thankful for your time today. Next month, we are reviewing Us as a book club. We'll be going through our first year, talking about what we liked, what we didn't like. There will be lots of Lola's ass floating around. And that is going to be the 21st of December?
I think so. We haven't
We
really
might
gone
have
over it.
to.
We have to.
Yeah, we might have to discuss the dates.
We have
But
to look
Yeah.
at the dates.
sometime December.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on in December, we are starting season 2, episode 1. I did make a suggestion in our Discord about who was to pick the first book of that. Do we agree with that suggestion, or do we want to do something else?
I have a book, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll be revealing that at the end of next month's book club.
Well, no, because
But not the review, we would, wouldn't we? Yes.
Because then
Shit.
we'd be revealing it.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to be reviewing it. Bugger. Okay. I did not think of that. Okay.
But we'll reveal the date eventually, but I
Yeah.
do have the book.
Okay.
It's gonna be out of like left field for me because I don't like sci-fi. But guess what? I'm picking sci-fi.
Ooh.
It's called Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz. And it's gonna be fun, okay?
All right.
because
Okay.
it says it's lighthearted on story graph, so it has to be fun.
And Ruth Ware promises fun.
No, she didn't.
Did she? I hope she never sees anything we ever say.
Yeah. Every so often, I'll
She
get
might need
so
to,
in-
but
Yeah, she'll see it. If she hasn't seen it before, she will eventually. It's one of those things where in broadcasting you get so used to speaking to each other, like I'm speaking to you, Victoria, or you, Jam, and then you think, oh wait, other people are going to see this
one day.
someday.
Someday.
I'll go over the synopsis real quick, assuming I can read right now.
Good luck.
I believe you.
A cozy near future novel. Well, I'll skip that part of the description. We're going to you don't have to eat food to know the way the city to know. Oh my God, I can't read. You don't have to eat food to know the way to a city's heart is through its stomach. So when a group of deactivated robots come back online in an abandoned ghost kitchen, they decide to make their own way. Wait, they decide to make their own way doing what they know. Yeah. Making food. The tastiest hand-pulled noodles around for the humans of San Francisco who are recovering from a devastating war. It's happening in America. This is news to me. But when their robot-run business starts causing a stir, a targeted wave of one-star reviews threatens to boil over into a crisis. To keep their doors open, they'll have to call on their customers, their community, and each other, and find a way to survive and thrive in a world that wasn't built for them. So we're reading about robots making food in a devastated, war-torn San Francisco.
You could just say San Francisco.
I've never been. I don't know what it's like.
I've never been.
Just with the state of how things are at the moment, I feel like that's
Yeah.
just them in 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And then robot pushes another robot out the window.
Oh, boy.
So hopefully it's fun and lighthearted, because that's what we were promised.
Yeah, that's what we. What was it we read for Halloween? The House on Haunted Hill. We read that, Megan, and it was. I was not a fan of it.
It was a trip.
The Haunting of Hill
house.
House.
The
Haunting of
Yes.
Hill House, yes. Because I just thought we'd have like a cozy little vibe adventure for Halloween. Nothing of the sort.
That doesn't sound like it would be a cozy book to me.
a cozy haunt, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like Boo, but not scary Boo, just lowercase Boo.
Yeah, like how we thought
you-
the Southern Book Club's Guide to Killing Vampires was going to be chill, fun vampire
Oh,
slaying,
God.
and then it
A
just
fun
wasn't.
romantasy. That didn't happen.
If you ever just want a very light haunting, play Speed Dating for Ghosts.
Alright.
I think I have that game on my Steam
It's
wish list.
super cute. It's very simple, but there's some really emotional stories in there, and it's just mostly sweet and fun. And you can hang out with Black Peter. He's my boo.
Alrighty.
But yeah, that was book club this month.
That was.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you Megan again for joining us.
I'm always happy to be here, and if you ever decide to read another one of my books, I would be happy to come back.
I think it just has to be a yearly.
I can see that
tradition at this
happening.
Yeah,
all
read
get
that
to-
book and have me talk about Domran for 4 hours. That'll be a ride.
You're married to Ghost Pepper, but you're in love with Domarin.
Not really. Domran showed up in my head one day and just wouldn't shut up until I wrote about him. So it's a kind of we put up with each other sort of thing.
And he is the grumpiest boy.
He is the grumpiest boy. He's got a sweet side though. You just have to get past the crunchy exterior to find it.
Alright, speaking of Mr. Pepper, should we go raid him?
Shall we go read Mr.
Yeah.
Alright, let's
He's
do
guild day today.
Oh, so he's with Woof and Sandrine?
With Sandrine for sure. Wolf is AFK this weekend with his mom, so I don't
Oh,
think he's
yeah.
around. But Sandrine, possibly T, might also be there as well.
That'd be cozy.
Alrighty, the raid is going. We will see you all next weekish maybe for some games.
Yeah, we'll maybe do some games. You should come play games with us, Megan.
Yeah.
Sure.
We
I
just
mean,
want you
if
to
the
do it
timing
anyway.
works out.
Same time.
My
every
schedule is
Sunday.
always the problem.
Well, we're always here, so whenever you're
Yeah.
free. All right. Good night, everyone. Guys, go get
Bye,
better.
everybody, bye.
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 Take care.